Welcome. Today is our fourth stitch for the Be Kind rainbow hoop. And today we're going to be learning chain stitch for our orange stripe. It is 3853, DMC 3853, and we're going to be using all 6 strands of floss again. So have a knot at the end of my thread. We're going to be building on what we learned from stem stitch. We're going to be holding a loop this time, but we're going to be working in a smaller loop in a different way. So I want you to think about cutting this space right here in half. We're going to work in one half and then we'll come back in the other half. The reason I say that is just to help us figure out where to come up. So in the right half of the bottom, I'm coming up in the middle. You could also think about it as about a needle width away from the edge. All right, we don't want to come up right on the corner, or we're going to be working very much into the negative space there. So I'm going to come up and then I'm going to go down in the same place. And this first one might be a little bit tricky. You might have to hold the knot out of the way on the back so that your needle doesn't try and go through it. Now I'm going to pull down, leaving a loop on the top. And this can be easier to see sometimes and understand if I put the loop up instead of down. Oh, there we go. And no shadows. Okay, now we're going to go 1 stitch length up away from the base right here. And again, I'm about a needle's width away from the edge of that line. And we're going to pull. I had some funky things happen on the back. Hold on. There we go. We're going to pull our thread the direction we are stitching. So we're going this way right now. So I'm going to pull my thread this way until the chain is snug around my floss here and is sitting on the fabric. Then I'm again going to hold a loop out of the way as I go back down right where my thread is coming from. So that's inside the loop right next to that thread. And then I pull down again, leaving a loop on top of my fabric. And then I'm going to come up that same stitch length away, a little bit away from the edge, pull through the loop the direction I'm stitching. If I pull the opposite direction, if I pull back this way, let me show you what happens. You can see it does not make a chain, right? It's going to pull tight. We're going to have this end. We're going to go to figure out what's happening next. No happiness happens this way. So I'm going to slide my needle in here, pull this back loose, and this time tighten it by pulling the direction I am stitching. Then I go back down where my thread is coming from, right inside the top of that loop. Leave a new loop on top, and then come up 1 stitch length away and pull the direction I'm stitching. Now, some people are going to find it a lot easier to hold the loop and then come up through it. That kind of doesn't work very well for me, especially if I'm not working in a hoop stand. So another option is for you to catch the loop, hold it just all the way out of your way. Then for me, it's easier to see what I got going on here. I come up and then I just slide my needle through the loop and then I pull. So play around with what works best for your fingers. It might work best for you to have that loop in front of you to see, to pull through. It might work best for you to pull to the side. It might work best for you to turn your hoop 180 degrees and work upside down from where you've been working before. Something like chain stitch is going to work a little bit different for everyone. As long as you get your needle through the loop before you pull, you're going to make awesome chains. So I'm just going to continue on my merry little way all the way across our rainbow here. So I just finished my last chain, and so we're going to end this row of chain stitch by going down on the outside of the loop, right on the end of our shape. You can see this creates just a teeny little anchor stitch to hold that chain in place. Now I'm going to reverse the whole process. Well, not reverse, I'm just going to do the whole process again, going back the other way. The trickiest part's going to be right here, because we kind of have this funky shape to work with, and we want our chain stitch to live in the middle of this space. So I'm going to do something a little bit different for this first chain. I'm going to come up right here on the edge, and then I'm going to look at where my floss sits and not go down exactly next to it. I'm going to go down a little bit up this arch right here. Again, still holding that loop out of the way. And then I'm going to go up where my normal stitch length would be from the bottom. So you can see I'm pretty close to that second needle point there. And I'm going to go up. So this is kind of creating this half chain hook, but what it's going to do is it's going to leave space for the woven wheel that's going to go there later. So then I'll go down into the top of that kind of half chain, and then I will make my next chain just like I normally would. You can see I went down right next to it, and I will repeat the process for all of my next normal chains. Now you're going to make sure that your needle is at least a needle's width from your first line of stitching when you come up, so that there's room for these chain stitches. When we're using all 6 strands of floss, chain stitches are pretty wide. So just make sure that you're giving yourself enough space for the chain stitch to actually lay down on the fabric. And then you just want to be gentle with how aggressively you pull your chain stitches tight. Like stem stitch, it's easy on chain stitch to get pulling too hard and to start bunching the fabric up and making your chain stitches look funky. So just be gentle. Remember to pull in the direction you are stitching, and then we can fill in the rest of this space. I want to show you the back of the hoop real quick. You can see here, these are my chain stitch backs, and it kind of looks just like a line of back stitch on the back occasionally. So when I anchor to a line of stitching like this, I have 2 choices right here. First, I could just anchor under these stitches by sliding my needle just straight under those 4 stitches, and that should be enough to hold it. Or if I only have a line of stitching like this to anchor to, as opposed to this big thick back that backstitch makes, this is how I like to do it. I'll go under 1 stitch right next to here, and then I'm going to go down a stitch. So I'm going to go down through the next stitch and pull through that. And then I'll come back to this first spot, go under here again, and this kind of overlapping that I've made my floss end do, there we go, is gonna hold it in place a lot better than if I were to just slide it under one of these stitches, which would not be very secure at all. So I'm gonna get a new section of floss, and we'll meet on the front again. And we're back to the front. I have a new section of floss on my needle, and I'm gonna come up through this last stitch right here on the inside of the anchor stitch but most importantly on the inside of the chain. And then I pull up, and then I go down just like I normally would inside that chain stitch. And then we're going to make our stitch length here, go up through our loop and pull. Oh, I'm caught on something somehow. And you can see that this new chain, when it actually pulls all the way through, is just going to cover up that previous little anchor stitch. So no one's going to know that I stopped and changed thread here, and then I'll just finish stitching down the row. And there you have it. 2 nice chunky lines of chain stitch fill in our space quite nicely. I will anchor this off and get ready for our next color. Happy stitching, friend.